So I've been struck in many of our conversations on this series about the pandemic now over the months by the ways in which this is, in some ways, you'd say, a tale of two cities. That wealthy Americans, people around the world, have been relatively unaffected, while others have been severely affected. In terms of your business, I'm assuming that spending by uh, high income earners is perhaps less than it might normally be, but other folks probably want an increase in their credit card debt limits, and I'm curious how you're handling that, in particular the demands that you're seeing from the bottom for greater leniency.
So first of all, your hypothesis is correct. It is the higher end of the middle market and the affluent customer who spent less during the pandemic. They weren't going out to nice restaurants and ordering a bottle of wine. They weren't buying very many discretionary items. They certainly weren't traveling, and therefore their spending was down. The middle market on down spending was actually quite robust, and aided tremendously in countries like the United States, where there was a fair amount of government stimulus money that was pumped into the economy. I remember back on April 15th of 2020, the US had its very first distribution of stimulus money to 88 million households for whom the IRS had access to their bank accounts, got money deposited at the end of the day on April 15th. And when you looked at the spending of those people in the 5 to 10 days after April 15th, compared to the 5 or 10 days before April 15th, it was night and day. The spending was up significantly. And this has been true of all 3 or 4 rounds of stimulus money that we have seen in the United States. The group that is most concerning to me in terms of the negative impact of this pandemic are small business owners. Small business owners around the United States and around the world really got hammered during the pandemic. And there was a huge difference between the small business owner who was omni ready, meaning that they had a good website and they were able to pivot from face to face sales to a more digital way of selling than the players that weren't ready. And frankly, the players that weren't ready, many of them have gone out of business. When we look at the last few months and we go back and compare it to the same period a year ago, in the United States, about 45% of small businesses that were transacting with us a year ago are not transacting with us now, which indicates that in the majority of the cases, they've gone out of business. And if you walk the streets of many big cities in the United States right now, unfortunately, you'll see many restaurants out of business, small shops out of business. And I think that's a terrible issue for the economy and for communities. Small businesses are hugely important to growing jobs in many, many markets, and they employ many, many people. And frankly, they help create a real sense of community and completeness of a Main Street USA or a Main Street anywhere in the world. And the fact that so many of them have suffered is one of the, I think, great untold stories of the pandemic, David.
That's fascinating. I want to just ask whether there's anything that Visa can do as such an important financial intermediary to help these small businesses get back on their feet in terms of extending special credit opportunities, anything like that that could help that sector of the economy?
We're hugely focused on it, David, in a number of ways. Our foundation has made a $200 million commitment to help small and minority owned firms around the world, particularly firms owned by women. Many, many small businesses, the majority around the world, are owned by women, and often they don't have equal access to capital, which is a real problem. But we're also doing other things. We are teaching people how to get uh, digital, how to have a good website, how to have a good capability for delivery or curbside pickup or in store pickup. We've had street teams go to 65 cities in the United States and visit with small business owners and tell them how we can answer questions, tell them how they get ready to operate in a digital world. I think we visited almost 300,000 small businesses in the last number of months around the United States. And we have made a global commitment to help 50 million small businesses around the world become more digital over the next 3 years. So it is something that both from a corporate purpose perspective, as well as from a business perspective, something that we're leaning into in a big way.